Right, well, on to the barrels. The first thing I decided to do was to clean out the threads. These threads where the pillar bolts go. These are the pillar bolts, and there's 12 of them, and that's what their head studs screw into. So they're threaded inside. The pillar bolts screw into the barrels, and then the head studs screw into the pillar bolts. So I decided to run a couple of taps down the threads just to check that they were clear, and they were absolutely solid. And here this is all the gunge that came out with the taps, and that's taken me about 2 hours just running 2 hours just to run a tap down and get these threads nice and clear, which they are now. Yeah, so it's a slow process, but I'm really glad I did that, because those threads, I don't know why, but they were really gunged up. I covered them up when they went for blasting, but they were in bad condition, those threads. So I mean, they're fine, they're not damaged, but they really were full of crud and really needed a tap down them. Okay, well, that's first job done. I thought that'd take about 5 minutes. It took 2 hours. Right, next job's on the barrels. What I've done is I've got some white spirit, and I've just wiped out the cylinders. It's amazing how much crud comes off, because when they hone them, they just leave them like that. When they're not clean, and you absolutely got to clean it. It's amazing how much debris or whatever's left from the honing is still there. So I've given them a thorough clean with some white spirit, and then I've just taken some engine oil and just wiped the bores with the engine oil, just a thin smear, just to make sure they don't go rusty. You don't want too much oil on the bores when you start the engine up for running in. Then I've cleaned out the tappet blocks, given them a good clean, and ready to insert the tappets. Now we're reusing the tappets. Everything's bagged and tagged, yeah, it's all there. Okay, and tappets writing towards timing side, so I know what each it says what each one is, and then which way actual round it goes, is which way the writing goes. So I know that the tappet's going to go back in exactly the same place that it came out of. I think we've saved them, so we're going to reuse these. One thing to note is that these are T160 tappets. So the difference of the T160 tappet to a T150 and Rocket 3 is that they've got a domed, they're domed at the top. T150s and Rocket 3s, so they've got a cup. All right. The other difference is that on the early T150s, probably Rocket 3s, I'm not sure, they used to have oilways going through the block to an extra tappet feed that came up from the main bearing caps. The main bearing caps used to have a little extra feed, and that used to come up to feed the tappet blocks. And so it'd come up here, and then it'd go through drillings in the block to feed both sides of tappets, both sets of tappets. And because of that, the tappets have got all weird oilway drillings in them. But generally, that's not used, and it's certainly not used on the T160. So what you'll sometimes find is you've got these tappets with holes in, etc. Now, oilways, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't matter which way round they go if you're not using that oiling system. And even bikes that do have that oiling system, it's recommended you cut it off. Right, so I'm going to put the tappets back in and put them all back in exactly the same place with that they came out of, so to minimise wear. And also, of course, I'm going to put some lube, a lot of lube on the shafts and on the feet of the tappet. All I'm going to do oil-wise, lubrication for the pistons, I'm going to put some oil on the piston skirts below the ring. Just a thin smear of oil below the rings, and that's it. The actual rings themselves and above are going to be dry, and that's the only lubrication, in the hope that those rings will cut in when we start the engine. Right, so I'm now getting ready for the slightly tense moment of putting the barrels on. Slightly tense is always a bit tense because you've got to slide them on over the rings, and you know, it's awkward. It's especially awkward on a triple because you've got a 120-degree crank, so you know, one's up, one's halfway down, one's at the bottom, and as you slide the barrels on, then you know, you can get them on over one piston, but then you can't, you know, it's not until the barrels are right down you get it over the center piston, then you can't get the rings out, and so on. On a twin, the pistons tend to be next to each other, 360 degree, so that's fine. You just put them both at the top, put the barrels down, no problem. Okay, but more complicated with a Trident, and that's why a lot of people do sometimes fit the center piston later on, put the piston in the center, have it already fitted in the center liner, and then lower it in and then do up the big end from underneath. But I've always done it this way, and because I've got the stand and I can't get through to the bottom, I'm doing it this way. I say I've always done it this way, so that's the way it's doing, which is to try and put them all on at the same time. So what I've done, I've put well seal around the top, and then I'm going to put a gasket on, and I've put lube, I've put assembly lube on all the cam lobes. So that's ready. I'll just put that gasket on in a minute. And then I've also put well seal on the bottom of the barrels. I hesitate to do that because, of course, as you lift them down, you always forget, and you put your fingers underneath and it's sticky and horrible gooey. But I'll do it anyway. And I've got the tappets in, and they're all lubed up with assembly lube, and then they're also all tied so that when I turn this the other way up, they won't just slide out again. And then I've borrowed a couple of special tools from a good friend of mine, Richard Davies, who's in the TR3OC, the Trident Rocketry Owners Club, and these are the best piston ring compressors you can get for a triple. Okay, they're hinged in 3 places. The reason for that is, in fact, 4 places. The reason for that is getting the rings, the piston ring compressors out afterwards, because this barrel's going to be so low on the crankcase. If the compressors were any thicker, you literally wouldn't be able to pull them out. So that's why you have to have very thin compressor rings that are only just wide enough to cover the rings, which is why having only not having 3-part oil rings is a big help, because these are only just thick enough to cover the rings. And if you've got those thin oil rings at the bottom, they can easily slip out. But then when the actual barrels are down, you can actually then remove this by unhooking the rings, and then you can, well, hopefully we can then pull the compressor out a lot more easily. So you can't use a normal wide compressor. You've got no chance of that, because it'll go on fine, but you never get the compressor out again. And then it's also lent me this. I've never used one before, and it's a tool. It's going to go in the top of the crankcases, and it's to hold the pistons in place. So that's going to be the center con rod, and these are going to be the 2 outer pistons, and it's just a tool to hold everything in place while I try and lower the barrels down, and then obviously you just pull it out. Available, I think, from most suppliers. These piston ring clamps are available from Clive Scarf Systems, these particular ones, but you can get similar ones from most of the suppliers. But as I say, you need a proper triple clamp whatever, and these are probably the best. Mind you, I haven't said that, I haven't used them yet, but it's always a nightmare doing this. And this is actually the first time I've ever done this on my own. I normally have someone with me holding up the barrel, so we'll see how we go. It could all end in two. Right, well, we're all ready. I've put some oil on the piston skirts, engine oil, and put these newfangled piston ring clamps on, compressors on, and put this sort of template or bracket, whatever you want to call it, on, which the idea that will stop the pistons from moving. The centre one's at the top, so I think the idea is that we'll put the centre one on, slide it down, take the clip off, and then the outer two are both the same height, and then hopefully we'll slide them down. But but I mean, we can't get the clips off, I don't think, you know. Anyway, we'll see. Right, before I start the terror of trying to get this on, I'll just mention that of course you can accidentally put it on backwards, so very handily try and put an F. I'm not sure if that stands for front, but there is an F always on the barrels, and that is indeed the front. So just saves you putting them on backwards and then a lot of grief when you get them on and realise they're on the wrong way around. Well, one other thing that I've just mentioned now, I'm just putting off the actual thing, putting the barrels on. When Dave had a look at this fin, and he didn't think, and he tried heating it up to straighten it, but he didn't want to straighten, and he didn't want to put too much heat on it. So in the end, he decided to leave it as was with a slight bend on it, because we both agreed that when the exhaust manifold is on the cylinder head, just above that, you'll not see that bent fin, and better just to leave it like that than make a mess. All right, anyway, here goes. Yeah. It's all going to go pear-shaped from here on. The other thing is, I can't see, of course, whether we've down far enough to take the ring compressor off. I can't tell whether when the barrels are fully down over the rings. That's definitely far enough down. Okay, that's the easy one. That's the middle. Clamp coming off. Right, the problem is that was by far that was the easy one, and these next two are going to be a nightmare. Right, that's 2, which may seem like a victory, but it isn't, because of course it's all about the third one. First 2, yeah, it's the third one that's the problem. It's not going well. Well, we've got 2 on, but that third one, what I'm trying to do is turn the crank to get that piston up, but it doesn't want to come up. Better. Yes, that would work. I could knock that down now, but because I'm using these sprung clamps, the edge, the spring on the clamp is now catching on the edge of the crankcase. I need to move the clamp round so the clamp bit is in the middle. That should now go down. The clamp is missing the edge of the crankcase. Right, that should be okay. Right, all I've got to do is try to get this last piston ring clamp out, and we might be there. We might be there. Okay, so the piston ring clamp is off. I've just got to encourage it to leave the crankcase. Well, hey, last clamp off. And I think we're in on all pistons. Just hey, mega. Whew. We're down, and I think we're okay. I think everything went in. I don't think we dislodged the ring or anything. There was certainly no bad sounds. It's damned awkward. The trouble I found with these rings, the compressors, is that of course to take them off, you know, you needed quite a bit of room there, and also when I put this one on, I had it on with a clip there for some stupid reason. Well, no, I had it there. So this cleared the crankcase, but this didn't. that tang didn't clear the crankcase, so I need to have the ring on there, because these just clear the crankcase, but that tail on the clip didn't, so of course I can put it down. But anyway, I think we're in, I think we're okay. Now, I haven't put the barrels fully down because I'm going to start putting the nuts on and then put the barrels fully down, because often there isn't room to get the nuts on if you above the studs, if you put the barrels fully down first. The trouble with that is I've got to bolt it down and then turn the engine over to check that everything's okay, but that's fine. So I'm just going to stop now and well, I'm going to have a cup of tea, stop shaking a bit, and then I'll put the nuts on the bottom of the barrels, and then we'll turn it over and just check everything's nice and okay. Right there. Right, so there we are. I've just loosely tightened down the barrels, and then using an adjustable on the crankshaft on the drive side, just turn the engine over and just checking that there's no scratches, that everything is nice, and indeed it is. So I'm really pleased. Everything going up and down really nice and smoothly. So yeah, I'm just looking at a line there, but it's just an oil line. Yeah, just where the rings, the gap of the rings is. Okay, so really happy with that. What I'm going to do now is finish up and tighten these nuts down. I'm not sure there's a torque for these, but if there is, to be honest, I'll ignore it, because there's no way I can get a torque wrench on it. There probably is a torque wrench that you can get, you know, that you might be able to use, but I haven't got one. I've never used one, so basically I just do those nuts up tight. I will then cut off these straps that are holding the tappets up, so they'll just drop onto the camshafts. They're fine. And just by the by, I've been meaning to say, so when I first looked at the barrels, the bores, when I took the bike apart, I thought they don't look too bad actually. And what I was looking for scoring, and they weren't really that badly scored. And I thought maybe we could get rid of the hone. But what I hadn't factored in was the fact that whilst the bores weren't scored, they were worn. So they were actually larger than they should have been. You know, they've been worn away a bit by the piston rings and so on. So whilst they weren't scored, they were actually too big a diameter. So the gap between the actual liners, the bores, and the piston was too big. There's now a 2.5 thou gap between the two, and it was 5 thou before. So I didn't actually measure the bores, which I have got a bore measuring gauge, but I looked at them, I thought, well, they look okay. But of course, you must remember that they might look okay, but they could actually be worn to large a diameter. Right, yeah, I'm going to tighten these up now. Just mention that we've bought some stainless steel nuts for the bottom of the barrels, and these are normal nuts. Normally the nuts you get are what are called star nuts. They're like serrated, and you need a special little Triumph spanner for doing those nuts up, which you can get from most dealers. But because these are specially made stainless steel nuts, they're normal, so we use a normal spanner to do those up in our case. And just to show you, these are the more standard cylinder base nuts. See, they're serrated, and then you've got a special spanner with a serrated edge that and they're designed specifically to tighten these star nuts up, or serrated nuts, not sure what they're exactly called, but that's the normal nut that you get on the cylinder base on a Trident. But ours aren't like this because they're special order stainless steel from Molnar Stainless. They make stainless steel kits for many British bikes. So the barrels are all done now, all on. Really happy with that. Next job will be to fit the timing gear, so that the to sort out the the camshafts. Okay, we'll put the timing gear back on in the timing case, and then it'll be the cylinder head after that.